Vine sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the half-open door of his office across the hall. The faint glow of his desk lamp spilled out, along with the muffled sounds of pages turning and a pen scratching against paper. He had been in there for hours, just like every night, ignoring her, ignoring everything except his endless mafia business deals. It had been a month since their marriage, a marriage she had chosen, an arranged deal between Vine's family and his alliance, power protection. She was just the price paid. And ever since the wedding, she had been trapped in this gilded cage, suffocating beneath his cold eyes under weight of expectations. His name is John Jungkook. To the world, he was untouchable, the young, ruthless mafia boss who commanded fear with just a glance. To her, he was a stranger she shared a bed with but never really touched, a man who watched her like she was both his possession and his prisoner. She clenched her fist, replaying their latest argument in her head. You think you can just keep me here forever? She had snapped earlier that evening, standing in front of him while he poured himself a glass of whiskey like her anger was nothing but background noise. I'm not your toy, Jinko. He didn't even look at her when he answered. You are my wife, that makes you mine. The way he said it, calm, clipped, final, ignited something inside her. Rage, frustration, desperation. I didn't choose this marriage, she shouted, her voice breaking. I didn't choose you. That was when he finally looked at her, his dark eyes, colder than winter storms, lifted to hers. For a second she thought she saw something there, a flicker of pain, but it was gone as fast as it appeared. You are right, he said smoothly, setting his glass down. You didn't choose, but choices don't matter in this world. Survival does. And if you want to survive, you will stay where I put you. She wanted to scream, to throw something at him, to claw her way out of the life he had forced on her, but instead she had stormed out of the office and locked herself in the bedroom, seething in silence. And now, hours later, she couldn't take it anymore. Her heart pounded as she moved quietly around the room, slipping on her coat over her nightdress and stuffing a few essentials into a small bag, cash, phone, keys, though she had no idea where she would even go. Anywhere was better than there. Anywhere was better than being suffocated by a man who acted like her feelings meant nothing. The clock struck midnight. She opened the window slowly, wincing at the soft creak, and stepped out onto the balcony. From there, the garden stretched out in neat rows of hedges and stone paths, guarded by iron gates and men in black suits. She knew the security was tight. Jungkook's paranoia made sure of it, but maybe, just maybe, she could slip past them in the shadows. Vine climbed down the trellis, the rough wood scraping against her palms, and dropped silently onto the grass. Her breath puffed in the cold night air, and adrenaline surged through her. Freedom. For the first time since the wedding, she tasted it. She ran across the garden, ducking behind statues and hedges until she reached a small side gate. To her relief, one of the guards was missing, probably on his patrol. The lock clicked open under Vine's shaky hands, and she slipped out into the dark sheet. The city at night was alive in a different way, hushed, dangerous, and predictable. Neon lights flickered from faraway bars, stray cats darted into alleys, and the silence of the mansion was replaced by the hum of distant cars. Her feet carried her faster and faster, the bag bouncing against her hip. She didn't know where she was going, maybe to a hotel, maybe to a friend's house, maybe she would just keep running until she collapsed. But she didn't get far. The sound of tires screeching against asphalt made her freeze. A sleek black car pulled up in front of her, cutting off Vine's path. The tinted window slid down, and her heart sank into her stomach. Jungkook. He stepped out slowly, his tall frame emerging from the shadows like a predator closing in on its prey. His dark suit looked too sharp, too perfect for the midnight hour, and his expression, God, that expression was a mix of worry and something she couldn't name. What the hell do you think you're doing? His voice was low, dangerous, vibrating with restrained rage. Vine clutched her back tighter, trying to muster the courage to stand her ground. I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. His jaw tightened. Leaving? He took a slow step toward her, and her body instinctively backed away. You think you can just walk out? You think I will let you? You don't own me. Her voice shook, and she forced the words out. You can't keep me like some prisoner. I won't. Before she could finish, he closed the distance between them in two strides, his hand gripping her wrist so tightly it sent sparks of pain up her arm. You want what? He hissed, dragging her closer. His eyes burned into hers, fierce and unrelenting. You won't stay alive if you keep doing something this stupid. Do you have any idea what would happen if my enemies got to you first? I don't care, she snapped, tears stinging her eyes. I would rather take my chances out there than rot in a mansion like some caged bird. Something in his face shifted then. The fury didn't leave, but it mixed with something rawer, something darker. Without warning, he pulled Vine against him, one arm sneaking around her waist while the other hand cradled her back of her head, and then his mouth crashed against hers. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't tender, it was forceful, demanding a punishment and a possession all at once. Vine gasped against him, her body frozen between resisting and melting. His lips moved with ruthless precision, taking control, swallowing her protest, claiming her in a way that left her breathless. She hated him. She hated his arrogance, his control, the way he thought he could bend her to his will. But God help me. Vine's heart pounded like a drum, and her knees weakened beneath his touch. When he finally pulled back, his breath was raked, his forehead resting against hers. You are mine, he whispered hoarsely, his voice laced with both fury and something terrifyingly close to desperation. And I will never let you go, not now, not ever. The night swallowed them whole, and she stood there trembling, caught between fear, anger, and a haunting realization that maybe, just maybe, she didn't want him to let go. The ride back to the mansion was suffocating. Jungkook hadn't said a word since he forced her into his car, slamming the door behind her as if to seal her fate. The sleek interior was cloaked in shadows, the faint smell of leather and his cologne wrapping around her. The city lights flickered past the tinted windows, but she couldn't bring herself to look outside. Vine sat stiffly, her hands gripping the strap of her bag so tightly her knuckles were white. Every part of her screamed to yell, to demand answers, to fight. But the weight of his silence crushed Vine, the tension stretching so tight that she felt one wrong word would snap it and maybe she with it. He sat beside her, one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting casually on the gear shift, his profile as sharp and unreadable as ever, his jaw clenched, his lips pressed into a thin line, but his eyes stayed locked on the door, as in the act of not looking at her was the only thing keeping his control in check. When the gates of the mansion loomed ahead, dread sank in Vine's stomach like lead. The black iron bars swung open, welcoming them back to the prison she had tried to escape. The guards nodded stiffly as they passed, but she caught the quick flicker of surprise in their eyes. They had noticed, they knew, and she hated the thought of what stories they might whisper behind her back now. The car rolled to a stop in the circular driveway. Her pulse thundered in her ears as Jungkook killed the engine and stepped out first. He didn't even glance at her as he rounded the car, yanked open her door, and all but dragged her out. His grip on her wrist was iron. She didn't care that she stumbled, didn't care that her shoes scraped against the gravel. He just marched her up the stairs and into the mansion, his silence screaming louder than any words. When the door shut behind them, the tension snapped. Wine ripped her hands free, glaring at him with all the fury burning inside her. "You can't do this to me." Her voice shook, but she didn't care. "I'm not your possession, Jungkook. I'm not something you can keep locked here like a pet." His eyes finally cut to hers, dark and dangerous. "You ran." His voice was low, steady, terrifyingly calm. "Do you have any idea what that means?" "What it means?" She spat. "Is that I don't want this life. I don't want you. I never asked for this marriage, and I sure as hell didn't ask to be treated like a prisoner in a world of guns and blood." His face hardened, the mask slipping into place, but she saw the twitch of muscle in his jaw, the way his fingers curled into fists at his side. "You think I wanted this either?" He snapped suddenly, his voice rising for the first time. "You think I wanted a wife shot into my life like a pawn on a chessboard?" The words stung sharper than she expected. Her chest tightened as she threw back. "Then why keep me here? If you don't want me, why not let me go?" For a moment, silence, a long, dangerous silence that stretched between them. Then he stepped closer, and she instinctively stepped back until her spine hit the wall. His shadow loomed over her, his eyes burning with something raw and unrestrained. "Because you are mine," he ground out. "Because whether I asked for this or not, you are my wife. And in my world, that means you don't leave. You don't run. You don't vanish into the night and make yourself a target for every who would love to put a bullet in my heart by getting to you first." Her breath caught, the intensity in his voice sending shivers down her spine. His words weren't just possessive, they were desperate, like the thought of losing her wasn't just an inconvenience but a wound he couldn't bear. But she couldn't let herself believe it. She shook her head, her voice cracked. "No, don't twist this into some noble excuse. This isn't about protecting me, Jungkook. This is about control, about power. You don't care about me, you only care that I'm yours." Something flickered in his eyes then. For the briefest second, the cold, ruthless mafia boss looked almost human. His lips parted as if wanted to say something, but instead he closed the space between them, his hand shooting up to cage her again. "Careful," he brushing along her jaw. "You are treading dangerous around." Wine's heart hammered against her ribs, her body betraying her as heat coiled low in her stomach. She hated the way his touch set on fire, hated the way his nearness made her forget every reason she should be pushing him away. But she forced the words out anyway. "Then do it. Be the monster everyone says you are. Lock me up, chain me, but don't you dare pretend that this is love." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Love. His grip faltered, his hand dropping to his side. For the first time since she had met him, Jungkook looked shaken. He turned away, wrangling a hand through his dark hair, pacing the room like a caged animal. She stood frozen, her chest rising and falling with uneven breaths, watching him. And for a moment she didn't see the cold Mafia king. She saw the man, at war with himself, a man who wore his ruthlessness like armor but couldn't quite hide the cracks beneath. When he finally turned back, his mask was in place again, but his voice was quieter, almost strained. "You don't understand," he said, shaking his head. "You think this is about chains and control. You don't see what I see. You don't know the enemies I have made. You don't know what they would do if they thought you were unprotected." "Then tell me," she whispered. "Show me. Stop shutting me out." His eyes locked on hers, and for a heartbeat, sh- she thought he might. She thought he might finally let her in. Instead, he closed the distance in a flash, his hand gripping her waist, and his lips crashed against hers again. The kiss wasn't punishment like before, it was fire, slow, deep, consuming. His mouth moved against hers with urgency, with hunger, with something that felt terrifyingly close to need. Her resistance crumbled. She hated him, she told herself she did, but her body betrayed her, melting into his touch, her hands clutching at his shirt as if she could anchor herself in the storm he created inside her. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers, his breath caught against her lips. "You drive me insane," he whispered harshly. "Every second you are near me, every second you push me away. You want me to let you go? I can't, I won't, because whether you like it or not, you are already under my skin, and that terrifies me more than anything." His confession left Vine speechless, her heart thundering in her chest. She wanted to hate him for it. She wanted to push him away, scream at him, tell him she didn't care. But the truth was, in that moment, she wasn't sure if she hated him or if she was starting to unravel under the weight of the fire he had ignited in her. The cage he thought was trapped in wasn't just made of walls and guards, it was made of him. And she didn't know if she wanted to escape anymore. The days after the failed escape were strange. Jungkook didn't mention it again, not directly, but his eyes followed her everywhere, sharp and unrelenting. Whether she was in the library, the dining room, or even walking the garden paths, she could feel him watching, not openly, not always in sight, but she knew. The guards too were double. Her cage had grown smaller. And yet something about him had shifted. He wasn't as cold. The silence at the dinner table wasn't suffocating. Sometimes she caught him staring at her, his expression unreadable, as though he wanted to say something but couldn't. Other times, I would hear him on the phone in his office, his voice low and dangerous, the words "keep her safe" slipping through the door before it closed. But the truth was simple. She didn't feel safe, not with him, not with this world. And then it happened. It was late afternoon when she decided to step outside, needing air. The garden was blooming despite the chill roses lying neatly along the stone pathway, the fountain glistening as sunlight struck its surface. She thought, for once maybe she could enjoy a piece of normalcy. But normalcy wasn't meant for her. As she turned a corner, a shadow moved too quickly at the edge of her vision. Her breath hitched. Before she could react, a hand climbed around her arm, yanking her back. A man dressed in black, but not one of Jungkook's, loomed over her, his grip browsing. His eyes gleamed with malicious delight. "Well, well," he sneered, his accent heavy, his smile rotten. "The queen of the king himself. You made this too easy, sweetheart." Panic shot through her. She tried to scream, but his hand covered her mouth, showing her back against the hedge. "You're going to make my boss very happy," he hissed. "A little message for John. He will pay dearly when he earns his pretty wife bleeds." Terror exploded in her chest. This was it. This was what Jungkook had warned her about. If she had left that night, if she had gotten further, this would have been her, taken, used, killed. But before the man could drag her away, a gun cocked behind them, touched her again. His voice growled, low and lethal, and it will be the last thing you ever do. The man froze. Slowly, he turned his head. Jungkook stood a few feet away, his black suit immaculate, his gun steady, his eyes colder than the death itself. But it wasn't just the coldness. She saw it was furry, bone deep, unrestrained. The intruder sneezed, but his grip loosened slightly. You can't watch her every second, John. Sooner or later, a single gunshot split the air. The man collapsed lifeless before he could finish the sentence. Blood soaked into the roses behind wine. She staggered back, her breath ragged, her body trembling. Jungkook didn't spare the body a glance. His gun slid back into his holster as his eyes snapped to wine. In 2 strides, he was in front of her, his hands gripping her shoulders, scanning her as though expecting to find her broken. Are you hurt? His voice was sharp, almost frantic. She shook her head, too stunned to speak. But her silence seemed to snap something in him. He yanked her into her arms, holding wine so tightly it was hard to breathe. His heart pounded against her ear, his entire body trembling with restrained emotions. You don't run, he whispered harshly. You don't leave, you understand me now? This is what happens. This is why I can't. His voice cracked, the words unfinished. For the first time, Wine realized it wasn't just about the control, his paranoia, his coldness, his obsession with keeping her here. It was fear. He was terrified of losing her. But anger flared in her too. She shot him back, her chest heaving. This is your world, Jungkook. This is what you dragged me into. If I hadn't married you, if you weren't who you are, I wouldn't be someone's target. His face hardened, but his eyes betrayed him. Pain, guilt, fury, all at once. You think I don't know what? His voice was raw, louder than before. You think I don't hate that you are paying the price for my sins? But it was too late. You are mine. You are in this now. And I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let them touch you again. The conviction in his voice terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. His dominance, his obsession. It wasn't just control, it was devotion, twisted, consuming, dangerous devotion. She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. You can't keep me like this, Jungkook. I will suffocate, I will lose myself. He stepped closer, his hand cupping her face, his thumb brushing her away the tear. His touch was almost gentle now, in a stark contrast to the blood still soaking the background nearby. Then burn with me, he whispered. Lose yourself with me, but don't you ever run away from me. His lips scratched against hers before she could reply, fierce and desperate, tasting the anger or need. She should have resisted, she should have pushed him away, but she didn't. She kissed him back just as fiercely, just as desperately, because no matter how much she hated this cage, no matter how much she feared him, she couldn't deny the fire that consumed her whenever he touched her. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to, but she tried to.